Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'll take 1 or 2 minutes. The people still enjoying their refreshments till they join. I think I'll take this opportunity to tell you what's happening in MMA next few days so that you don't miss them and attend all the events what is scheduled there. Next event is happening on 12th of September because first week of September, quite a bit of holidays. Again, Read and Grow series, another book, another team of experts we'll be discussing. Then on Saturday the 14th, is a Kevin Care MMA Chinnikishan Innovation Award. So again, for 3 outstanding innovators are going to be coming and receiving the award. Prabha Narasimhan, Managing Director and CEO of Colgate Palmolive with the chief guest. Please not to miss this. Please come and join us. This time is totally by registration. We already have quite a bit of thing. I think we got allocation of only about 300 people to from MMA. The total capacity is only 1,000. Others are coming from the other host actually. Please, in case you want to join, do register. Then on Wednesday, 18th of September, again, an interesting event, Straight Line to Great Horizon, Endless Possibilities. We have another outstanding speaker, General Arun is going to be talking on this subject. This is 1001 lecture. He's been delivering regular lectures as Armed Forces General and otherwise. And please do come. It's happening at MMA at 6 p.m. Then on Friday, again, Read and Grow series will happen on 18th of October. Then we have All India Management Convention on 22nd October. We also have another very, very interesting event, Peacetime Challenges, Army's Wayanad Experience. We have General Brar, who is the GOC of Dakshin Bharat area. He'll be coming and talking to us. Now coming to today's evening, Hemant, coming to today's event, Read and Grow. Let me also warmly welcome all the viewers watching this program live from all our social media portals. As usual, if you have any question, please send your questions, the numbers which is shown on the screen. We'll place all your questions with the distinguished speakers in the evening. Yes, the people are joining us any moment. So coming to Read and Grow, this we have been doing because we strongly believe, at least I have seen so many great leaders at MMA, they're all voracious readers. There are two, three things are very common. You would have read in many books. They all get up early in the morning. They are very, 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 very choosy about their physical fitness, what they eat. They read voraciously. That's why they make them a great leader. We thought, why can't our young leaders imbibe these qualities? And that's why we bring some outstanding leaders to come and speak on this subject, Read and Grow. Because we always believe you have to be a great leader, you have to be a great reader. That makes you really understand the whole concept of whatever you deal with it. And you have a very high self-esteem once you start reading and you have good knowledge. Coming to today's subject, mental models, 30 thinking tools that separate the average from the exceptional. Another outstanding book. I must thank Sangeeta for choosing this lovely book because this is the one which will be very, very useful and it will connect with large number of students and volunteers who are watching this program. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hand together to welcome distinguished speakers for this evening, Sangeeta, Mohan, Kumaresan and Rajan, Bala, to please come and join us on the stage. The format is I will introduce the distinguished speakers, thereafter Sangeeta will set the context, then there will be a conversation with the speakers and the special invitees, then we'll have the Q&A session. Now let me have the privilege of introducing Sangeeta Shankaran Sumesh. She's a business and leadership coach, speaker, author, independent director on corporate boards. Sangeeta is a former CFO turned business and leadership coach, independent director on corporate boards and best-selling author. With 25 years of experience in multinationals, she empowers corporate leaders to maximize their potential performance. Sangeeta is a chartered accountant, holds a credential from Harvard Business School and also a TEDx speaker and a recognized coach. Sangeeta, thank you again for your great support MMA, for bringing out outstanding Read and Grow series month after month along with your team. Let me have the privilege of introducing Mr. Mohan Kumaresan. Mohan Kumaresan is the Executive Vice President of HR, Koantek Information System with over 23 years of experience in global HR leadership. He specializes in aligning HR strategies with business goals, driving growth and operational excellence. Mohan is also recognized for his innovative approach to HR, including talent acquisition, organizational development, and data-driven decision making. Very warm welcome, Mr. Mohan. Welcome to you to this evening. Then we have another special meeting for this evening, Rajan Bala Venkatesan. Rajan Bala Venkatesan is the Chief Financial Officer of LatentView Analytics and with over 15 years of experience in corporate finance, merger and acquisition and financial strategy. A chartered accountant, and Rajan has played a pivotal role in driving financial growth strategy across various organizations, including Ashok Leyland, Emphasis, and his expertise span financial planning, valuation, and corporate development. Very warm welcome to Mr. Rajan. Pleasure to have you this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm honor, of course, to distinguished panel this evening, an outstanding panel. We're going to have a great evening. Over to you, Sangeeta, to call. Sangeeta.
Good evening, everybody. Okay, so this month's Read and Grow, we have yet another book, interesting book. It's called Mental Models and it is by Peter Hollins. So this book is about 30 thinking tools that separates the average from being exceptional. So why did I pick this book? I thought as a leadership coach, I can help my clients to handle their challenges better. So it was purely out of selfish reasons that I picked it. But then I found it to be a big treasure house because what I liked about this book was it's short, effective, and it has a lot of practical models. So why do we need a mental model? So the author quotes Charlie Munger. And Charlie Munger has said that in a world without mental models, it tantamounts to blindfolding yourself and randomly pointing out to a spinning globe to check where is Cuba. So in order to avoid this, that's what makes it important to have a mental model. So in my perspective, I think we all use mental models knowingly or unknowingly. And the good thing is that the author has tabulated it, given it good structure, and made it very easy for us to consume it. So at a very high level, he's classified them into 5 different topics and he shared different sort of mental models for each of them. The first chapter dwells upon decision making for speed and context. So while making decisions, we are normally overloaded with a lot of information, but then it's key to have just the selective information and take only what really matters to make the right decisions. So the first mental model he shares is something common. Most of you are probably aware of it. It is the Eisenhower matrix. So wherein you classify your things as important, urgent, not important, and not urgent. So basically by classifying it this way, it helps you to prioritize and identify what is it that you need to work on at this particular moment. So important tasks cannot be skipped and important tasks have to be prioritized. Whereas the urgent tasks, he says, they are normally called for speed of action, right? And it's usually from other people. But he says it's important to address what is important and not really what is urgent. The second mental model is about to visualize your dominoes. So he says most of us consider only what is really important at this point in time, but we need to think of it from a dominoes perspective, wherein what are the consequences of certain decisions we make in a long-term perspective. So you think futuristically and think twice before you make decisions so that you can eliminate rash decisions. The third mental model is about making reversible decisions. So optimal decision making is combined with good speed. And to improve your speed, he says, distinguish between reversible and irreversible decisions. So he gives an example of painting a bathroom, which he says that's reversible. Whereas if you were to add a new bathroom, that's irreversible. So he says, think, how can I make this decision reversible? And what exactly does it take to make it a reversible decision? And reversible decision, he says, doesn't mean you're going back on your word. It's just adjusting your position. The fourth mental model is on seeking satisfaction. So he says focus on only what you need, and he's classified as maximizers and satisfiers. Maximizers, they want everything possible, they will go 100%, they are very picky and they want perfection in everything. Whereas satisfiers, on the other hand, they accurately determine what is it that really matters. What is their purpose? This is just good enough. So he gives a very nice example. Let's say you go to a grocery store and you want to pick up peanut butter. He says, just at a high level, 2 or 3 parameters, if they are satisfied, it's good enough, go ahead and pick it. You don't have to, tick off everything because it's not worth your time and effort on looking for 100% perfection. So quickly eliminate options by knowing what exactly satisfies you. The fifth model is on the principle of 40 to 70. So he says when you have a difficult decision to make, even if you get 70% of the approval, that's good enough, and just go ahead and do it, because anything less than 40 is, again, you're just guessing and you're just wasting your time. Sixth model is on minimizing regret, where he shared a framework. So he says, see yourself when you're 80 years old. And if you were to look back at that age, would you have any regrets? So ask yourself this question. In X number of years, will I regret taking this decision or not taking this decision? And this framework will force you to think and then decide. The second chapter talks about how you can think more clearly. So because he says sometimes we rely on the stories of other people, and therefore our views may be biased and it becomes inaccurate, our decisions. So the first mental model under this mental model 7 he gives is to ignore black swans. So like in Europe in the 18th century, the absence of swans in any other color, and they didn't have reason to believe that there could be swans apart from white. So they didn't know that black swans existed. So it is a metaphor to describe unpredictable events that create a massive change in perception, perspective, and our understanding. So there are 3 elements in a black swan event. What are they? It's a big surprise, it has a major effect, and people attempt to rationalize it after the event. So he gives a nice example here. He says, should you stop driving cars just because you heard an acquaintance met with a car accident? No, right? So he says that's why one needs to ignore the black swan events, because they are just outliers. Mental model 8 is about looking for equilibrium points, and this is based on the concept of diminishing returns. He says increase in resources doesn't always correspond to increase in outcomes that you want, because the more resources we put into something, the less we get out of it. So the nice example he shares here is about Goldilocks. I'm sure all of us have read the story of Goldilocks, right? So wherein, she examines everything of the baby bear and she says, this is just right. It's neither too hard, neither too soft, and it is perfect. So he says, look for equilibrium points. Mental model 9 is about wait for regression to mean. So in this, you find real patterns of data so that you don't get fooled. So he gives an example. He says if you're dating somebody and your apartment is kept really neat and clean so that you want to impress the other person, but this doesn't represent your true behavior. So he says just wait and see, be patient, use your gut feeling and evaluate and plan your future so that you can be more precise and practical. Mental model 10 is about what would Bayes do. So Bayes' theorem is something that is used for predicting what would happen if other meaningful events have occurred. So there's a formula to calculate probabilities and predict the future based on real events. So that is what Mental Model 10 is about. And Mental Model 11 is about do it like Darwin. Darwin's thinking, like we know, was slow because he was highly detail oriented. And he believed that in order to be an expert, it doesn't happen overnight, and therefore you need to spend more time to delve into the details. So Darwin immersed himself against evidence that went against his findings, because he says the human mind is such that it's inclined to dispose of contrary theories. Somebody doesn't align to what you say, you just tend to dispose of, right? So that's what he says, do it like Darwin. Mental Model 12 is about thinking with System 2. What is that? So it says the human brain saves energy for dangerous situations and doesn't realize that it can actually cause flawed thinking. The System 1, like if you were to laugh, cry, these are automatic and instinctive and it's effortless, it doesn't spend energy. Whereas if you use your System 2, that's a lot more slower, it's draining, it's tiresome, because you're contemplating on things and you're being a lot more analytical, and therefore use System 2. Then the chapter 3 dwells upon problem solving. So he says step outside your head and see a situation and the problem as clearly as you can, because even the most respected and the trusted world leaders, they have advisors, they have coaches to act as their sounding boards so that, they get their ideas vetted and they are being challenged. So this is something that I really like, because as a coach, I have been doing this to a lot of leaders. So here he uses the mental model 13, which is peer review your perspectives. So he says this is used to understand consensus view and why your perspectives may actually differ. So the goal of getting a peer to review your work is to guard against inaccuracies, omissions, and to offer alternate viewpoints. Because all of us are wired to think in a certain direction, and a peer can give us a completely different perspective. Mental model 14 is to find your flaws. So he says, ask yourself, if you want your perspective to fail, what is the easiest way for that to happen? Because he says we're all having confirmation bias. We normally start with the conclusion in mind and therefore we work backwards, and that's how the human mind is wired. So mental model 15 talks about separate conclusion from causation. So he says understand what is it that needs to be addressed to solve your problem. Because we are easily fooled into confusing correlation and causation. So he gives a nice example here. He says during the summer months, right, the sales of ice cream increases, and so does the sale of sunglasses. Now, is it right to say that people are buying ice creams because people are buying sunglasses? No, and vice versa, right? So he says you need to separate the correlation from the causation. Mental model 16 is about storytelling in reverse. So here he shares about the fishbone diagram, which many of you may be aware of, wherein you identify multiple potential causes and you get to the root cause and you flesh out the possible causes for the problem at the same time. So scrutinize what are the causes that's listed and how much do the identified cause actually contribute to the effect. Analyze it. Mental model 17 is something called scamper it. So this is a very methodical approach to problem solving and finding solutions. It's actually an acronym. So scamper, S stands for substitute. Is there a substitute to a particular product or process? C is to combine. Can you combine 2 or 3 different products? So he gives a nice example of a spork. Do you know what's a spork? Combining a spoon and a fork, right? So many times you have like a spoon, but then the edges are like that of a fork. So therein you're combining different things. So he says, can you combine? A is to adapt. Can you adjust something so that you can enhance things? That's something he asks. M is to either minimize or magnify. It's wherein you get new insights or lesser significance into a particular problem. P is to look for put to another use. Is there another use for particular process or product? And E is to eliminate, whatever is unwanted you eliminate, and R is to reverse, wherein you switch the order of the process or you tend to rearrange things to see how you can fit in everything. Mental model 18 is about getting back to first principles. So he quotes Elon Musk here, wherein he asks, how can we be so sure that we aren't attempting to solve a problem based on imperfect or incomplete solutions? This is something that Elon Musk asked. So this mental model is used to break the preconceptions and finding your own solutions to it. Because he says assumptions aren't always correct. Are you just blindly following the blind? He wants you to think and reflect on that. Then he gives the example of SpaceX, wherein SpaceX, like we know, wanted to send rockets into the space, but with the high price of rockets, that was being a roadblock to them. So instead of buying rockets from other companies, SpaceX decided to insource the process and purchase the raw materials and build the rockets themselves. And thereby, SpaceX managed to cut the price of launching a rocket to a fraction of it. So what did Musk do here is use the first principles, thinking to break the situation down to fundamentals, and simply asked, what does it take to get into outer space? So he shares 3-step process to get past our assumptions. The first is to identify and define your current assumptions. Second is to break down the problem into the first principles, and third is to create the solutions right from scratch. So the first principle leaves you with a set of facts and desired outcomes from where you forge your own solutions. Chapter 4 talks about anti-mental models, that is how avoidance can actually breed success, and this chapter will provide you clarity on avoiding the negatives so that you can breed success by pursuing your goals. Mental model 19 is about avoiding direct goals. So what is it you want to avoid? What would your terrible manager do? Avoid those actions. So define failure and create methods to avoid things at all costs. Mental model 20 is about avoiding to think like an expert, where you see the big picture and the finer details. Because he says experts don't always think about finer details. So he gives a nice example. How many of you watched the movie, Oscar-winning movie, Bravehearts? Can I see a show of hands? Only 2 people? Yeah, okay. Yeah, some more. Great. Okay. So in this movie, he says there was one blunder. Although the blunder was just for a second, a lot of people actually noticed it. In this movie, there is an SUV automobile featured in the middle of a medieval battle. Right? There were no automobiles at that time, right? So this was one small blunder, and experts tend to overlook such things. So mental model 21 is to avoid your non-genius zone. He says, focus your resources and time on your strengths. So leverage your strengths, play to your strengths, and know your limitations. Mental model 22 is about avoiding your to-do list. Because he says, use your attention on what matters right now, and we can't differentiate between what we should avoid and what we actually deserves our attention. And writing down, many of us have the habit of writing a to-do list, so that can be a good reminder, but the question you need to ask is, what are the tasks that creates the biggest impact for you for today? And he says you could even prepare a don't-do list, because they are the ones that actually steal your time and undermine your goals. So exclude things that don't add value, because ask yourself, is it really worth your time? Mental model 23 is to avoid the path of least resistance, and this is to exercise self-discipline and willpower, and this means you ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? And what are the actions for right goal? The chapter 5 is all about oldies. I'm sure oldies are goldies is what he says, and many of us are probably familiar with a lot of these things. Mental model 24 is about Murphy's law, which says that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So plan for the worst case scenario. Mental model 25 is about Ocean's razor. The simplest explanation that one can usually give is the correct one, and that is your best approach. 26 is about Hallen's razor, and he says this can be used to explain actions by giving others the benefit of doubt, and this can also help improve your relationships, because you don't suspect people and just give them the benefit of doubt. Mental model 27, yet another popular one, which is your Pareto's principle, which is your 80-20 principle, where your time and resources will create the biggest impact. And the idea of Pareto principle is not to cut corners, but to maximize efficiency. Mental model 28 is about Sturgeon's law, and this is used to protect your mental resources. And this is interesting because he says 90% of everything is crap, and it's just the 10% that's actually meaningful. So he also he says sometimes what we consider as crap could be gold for somebody else. Mental model 29 and 30 talks about the Parkinson's laws, and this can be used to stop procrastinating and get done more with lesser time. So here he talks about triviality, because we all like to think and feel that we are productive, and therefore we tend to procrastinate things. So he says, know what is your real priority. And combating triviality is by having a clear, strict agenda, knowing your overall goals for the day, and developing awareness to see where is it that you're losing your energy. And Parkinson's law, like we know, states about work expands so as to fill the available time for completion. I'm sure many of us go through it, right? If we have sufficient time, we just prolong things. So he says, push yourself to finish early and free your mind. Save your time by giving yourself less time. So to conclude, what could have been better in the book? My perspective is that there could have been a lot more examples and slightly lesser fluff, though it's a small, quick read. The recall value of these 30 mental models, sometimes it can seem overwhelming. And the last thing is, There are no new concepts by the author. I think what he has done is he just put together a lot of them together. But yet, what I liked about the book is that, these are all very useful and we can use it in different scenarios in our professional and personal lives. The oldies, which are the goldies, are a great reminder, and most importantly, I think all these mental models have the capacity to produce effective results because they are all tried and tested mental models. So that is the quick summary of this book. Though the book is small, I'm sure the summary took long because, we dwelled upon 30 different mental models. Now let's see what our speakers have to say about each of these things, and I have a set of questions for them, so let's pick their brains on it. So Rajan, what are your thoughts on this book?
Sangeeta, I'd like to start by saying you've summarized the book really well for everyone. I don't think there's much left for us to do, but...
I'd like to hear your practical views, your experiences, which is unique to each person, right? So, yeah.
So I'll start by talking about what I felt about the book. The book, of course, this was something that we were also discussing just before we got in, right? None of what you read in the book, and especially if you're someone who's worked or is a seasoned, professional, these are principles that you would have heard of, read about, right, or discussed with peers, with groups or forums that you'd be a part of, right? So none of these, I would say, are rocket science or, in fact, even very complex models. But what I really appreciate about the way he, the author has presented the book is, one, the flow with which each of these concepts are bundled together, right? I think that's a very, very nice way that the 5 different chapters that you spoke about, how he's bundled each of those concepts together. That was something that was very refreshing, and the flow really was well done. 2, in terms of, while a lot of these concepts are concepts that you already are aware of, it's always good to have a refresher course, especially if, for people like us who all the time are busy doing things, right? I mean, whether it's important work, whether it's urgent work, whether it's important but not urgent, or not urgent work, and we do all of those. While we all want to be productivity monkeys, as they call it, right? We want to find hacks to make the best use of our time. A book like this, helps you refresh concepts that you're already aware of, and actually makes you go back to the drawing board, and think as to what can you do better. So again, that was something that I really enjoyed about reading the book. Lastly, I would say, in a forum like this, especially, I was just telling this to Sangeeta, I also felt that it was like preparing for an exam for me. So while I wrote my chartered accountancy exam close to about 20 years back, almost 20 years back, every time I still have to sit down, read a book, collect my thoughts. I remember, how I used to diligently take notes back when I was, studying for my exams, and this made me do that. So, very happy that Sangeeta gave me this opportunity. And again, the book, I'd say, it's a wonderful book. Not too complex concepts, but concepts that you can apply in your daily life.
Awesome. Thank you, Rajan, for sharing that. Mohan, to you. What is it that you liked about this book, and is there anything you didn't like about the book?
So, most of the points here you and Rajan had covered, but I want to share my personal thoughts about this book. Why I like this book is, this book also applies to the young generation today, okay? Because they decide on their better halves these days predominantly, okay? They can also apply these data points. Okay, yeah. It may actually touch upon the personal things, but very good. Actually, when I read this book, actually, how he relates the data to the real life. Okay, see, one scenario I would like to tell here is a real-time story. My sister's daughter, when she loved a person, and my sister called me and told me, okay, she's in love with another person, and we are decide on these cases. Then I said, give the phone to my sister's daughter. Okay. I asked 2 questions. Will that person whom you are deciding to marry will take care of you? In worst case scenario, if anything goes wrong, you have to take care of him as well. You are deciding on a certain case. It's a lifetime thing, okay? Because the very speciality about this book is, it talks about many management lessons and also the life lessons, okay? Which is very, very, very important things. It applies to the layman, not only for the management students or the people who are working in the corporate world. Really, this applies to the layman's life as well. We can decide on many things. We forget many things in the daily run, okay? And if we apply this model, we will be able to cautiously avoid certain things and achieve our objectives. This is another thing. And another speciality about this is 40-70 principle, okay? So don't look at extreme things, okay? If you have a data in place, between 40 to 70, you should be able to decide. So another thing, this book is written in paper and something like that. I am from a database related company, data company. Shortly, all these use cases will be built in an AI. We will have an app soon for all these scenarios. We have to tell data points to the app and it will be able to design on our behalf. And mark my word, it will be 70 to 80% precisely right. Because people started reading our brains, okay? Human intervention definitely will be there, but data is already started ruling the world, okay? And many of us don't know. I am saying the so-called literates in this world don't know how the data is really ruling the world, okay? So shortly it is going to take over the human brains, okay? Already GenAI is there, all these people are behind GenAI, and this book will be automated as an app shortly. And it will be a big business.
Spoken truly like a data guy. Thank you for that, Mohan. To you, Rajan, I mean, the book, like I said, speaks about 30 different mental models. So, which is your favorite one out of this? And have you used any of them, and how have you benefited if you have used?
That's a nice question. I'd actually, there were in fact, there were several of them which really appealed to me, but if I were to single out a couple of them, right? So the first one is, you spoke about peer reviewing yourself, right? I think that is one principle that I very faithfully apply, because the one thing that we all get caught up in is doing things and getting things done, right? A lot of times for us to be self-critical of the work that we do is pretty difficult, right? And I just like to quote an example. This was from my, so we started, once you clear the CA exams, there's this course called GMCS that you need to necessarily undergo, which, is about general management and communication skills, right? And as I remember, so I did this course in Delhi, which is where I come from. And one of the trainers, very simple question he asked us was, as a budding professional, what should you focus on? Should you focus on your strengths or should you focus on your weaknesses? And of course, you had that question divided the room. There were several people who said we should focus on our strengths. Some people said we should focus on our weaknesses. But he gave a very, very simple example. He said that you should focus on your strengths because other people will focus on your weaknesses, right? And that thing, I mean, even though it's 20 years, since I still remember it like yesterday because it's so true. I mean, and whenever you need critical feedback, all that you need to do is you need to go and ask people for critical feedback because people are always looking for those chinks in your armor, they're looking for things that you're not doing right. So, and it also helps you in your professional journey. So I think that's very, very important. And I do apply that myself. The second one is again, while there's this whole principle of black swan, and I'd want to talk about this specifically because a lot of us as well tend to work with a worst case scenario most often, right? I mean, we always keep anticipating that something will go drastically wrong, right? Or this person that I work with, is going to give me a bad feedback at the end of this project, or it could be, it could always be assuming the worst case scenario. So, and I took up this current role, just to let you know, I'm the CFO at LatentView, but I joined them at a time where they had just started the IPO process, right? And I, as a finance professional, had never been a part of an IPO process. So one, the company took a huge leap of faith and a bet on me to sort of run this process, which is of course a dream come true for any CFO. But is as lovely as that sounds, it's also nerve-wracking, right? Because just because of the number of variables that you have to work with, the number of external people that you need to work with. So we were working with 3 sets of lawyers. We were working with 3 sets of merchant bankers, and there was an accounting firm, which is stat auditors, and then you had an external accounting firm. So you had 8 sets of people. Plus, I was new to the organization. I had no history, no sort of tribal knowledge of how the company was built, how have we grown, intricacies of the, legacy accounting issues, finance issues, right? So when I joined the company, every day I would assume the worst, thinking that, there was an outer deadline by which we had to hit the market. And the simple remit that my founder gave me was when I joined the organization. So I joined the company in beginning of July. The simple remit was we need to go public before Diwali, right? So that was the goal. So we had 6 months to get the IPO done. In fact, less than 6 months, and we had just started the process. I can tell you, I had several sleepless nights, assuming the worst, that I'm not going to be able to deliver on this project. We are going to miss the timelines, and obviously this is going to be the biggest failure of my life. But as luck would have it, right? I mean, I think a lot of times you have to anticipate the worst, but also be prepared for it and be resilient. I think that's the one big, I would say, learning for me. While I kept thinking that something really drastic would happen, at the back end I was also preparing for it, and I was getting more and more resilient. And over time, I broke the larger problem into simple building blocks. And guess what? We were able to hit the market before Diwali. Our IPO was hugely successful. Right, but through the process, there were several times that I questioned myself and I assumed the worst. But this is a big learning for me that as long as you have a dependable team and people that you can work with, and break down the problems into simple maybe steps, you can get to great results. So that's another
lovely, very nice
experience.
examples. Thank you for sharing that. Mohan, to you. So have you used any of these mental models either knowingly or unknowingly? Sometimes we are just wired to, it automatically comes, right? So many times they're like, for example, the system 1 and system 2, only when I read about it, I realized, and then I'm like, yeah, we all do use this, right? So have you had any such experiences, and how do you think it has helped you grow?
Yeah. So, say, I worked for a company, Indium Software, for 14 years, I was in the growth journey of the company, When I joined, the company was 100 people, and when I left, it was 3,200 people, Last 5 years of the companies, when I was there, the growth was tremendous, We have to decide on the fly, In fact, CTO decision, was made on the fly. Because there was an urgency, we made a wrong hire in the past, and we had to take one decision immediately. So surprisingly, one of the junior recruiter, was given this assignment to hire a person for a VP position. And he had never dealt with leadership hires in the past. So he had to be taught. What I gave the confidence, I don't have a time to teach and all those things. I said, it is an experience for you. Try your luck. She tried her luck and gave one VP person for that position. Later, eventually he had grown and he served the company. He grown the company to 3,200 member organizations as a CTO. So where I am coming is, in this, one of the lesson, don't rely on always expert's opinion. As a human, when something goes wrong, go and consult with the expert. Whoever is well versed in that field, we go, talk to them, get his advice, and we will simply follow. That may fail also. That we may get successful as well. But where I am coming is that initial decision of hiring that person was decided by a junior 4-year recruiter. And it paid off. So one of the model teaches that don't have to rely on experts' opinion. Okay? So that was very impressing for me. That was the lesson learned. And another thing, from my corporate world, the same company, I have seen a CEO, okay, and if hiring mistake happens, he takes the blame. Mohan, I made a decision finally, hired a wrong person, okay, and let us replace him by another person, okay. Not many leaders will volunteer for owning the decisions, okay, even though it is a mistake of a group of people, okay. I made a decision because he is the final decision maker, okay, and quickly. So there are instances our decision may go wrong. We don't have to get panicked. How? That is where the author says your decision, all your decisions should be reversible, okay, but that doesn't apply in life. Okay, there are instances where we need to choose a life partner. I am again coming back to the personal life. Okay, so use your maximum data and inferences study to pick up your life partner. Okay, there is no wrong choice or right choice. It is up to us. If we decide, we have to own the decision. Okay, don't blame the parents. So that's my take.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that, Mohan. To you, Rajan. The mental model 22 talks about avoiding the to-do list, right? And then there the author has mentioned about the tasks that are insignificant, that don't help the bottom line. So I thought, as a CFO, what are your perspectives? Have you encountered such situations, and how have you navigated through that?
That's again an interesting question, and you're absolutely right. And it very often what I do is while everyone looks at and I have this habit of on a Sunday evening, I typically look at my calendar for the following week, right? And I look at what are the meetings that are that have been scheduled. What I also do is I also reflect back on the week that's just gone by in terms of where is it that I've actually spent my time, nice. Right? Interestingly, and this is something that I've gotten slightly better over the last, I would say, a year or two, is to specifically avoid getting into meetings where people love to get, obviously senior management time. They also love to get your opinions on, they may have done the work, but they would want a second opinion from you, a third opinion from you, right? And I invariably get pulled into several of these meetings, where my input may probably be needed for, say, 10% of the overall problem, but I would have to sit through some of these meetings, right? So a lot of times what I do is I decline meeting requests, for instance, and I say, whatever decision that you need from me specifically, come do one-on-one, as opposed to me spending an entire hour sitting through that meeting. So this is something that I consciously do, and more often than not, right, when someone approaches me with a problem, the first thing that I would always do is, obviously, and this comes through experience, is ask them a few questions, see what is the level of preparedness, right? And invariably, if I sense that they've not done their work, I'd ask them to go back, and come back to me at a point in time where, I feel that they've done enough research and done all the diligence before they're bringing something to me for decisions. And I think this is very important because all of us love to be busy. We all love to have busy days from the morning to evening, right? We like to, come back home and tell, oh, I had a crazy day today. It was, I had so many meetings to do. But really, I mean, if you reflect back in terms of what was the impact on bottom line, and that's a very interesting question. I'm going to be applying that, going forward, and it's a big learning for me. I'd say probably 10% of the work that I do has direct relevance with, say, the long-term objectives of either me or the company, right? Most of the work invariably is BAU work, right? Business as usual work, which, we should, as leaders, especially learn to delegate. So that's something that I will sort of work on. Sangeeta, the second part of your question was?
If you have encountered such situations, I think which you did, but if you can quantify it and relate it to the bottom line, that will be great.
Yeah, so I'd say in terms of where and this is very important, and I think this ties into also the Pareto principle, which I which is again something that I really liked in the book, right? So this is something I tell people that I hire, right? Don't look for a lot of creativity in your work. What you would end up doing, creative work in your overall, the volume of work that you handle would probably be 10 to 20%. 80% of the work would be routine, boring work that you do need to do repeatedly, time and time and again, right? But it's the 20% that really impacts or sort of professionally develops you over time, right? I've in my journey as a finance professional over time have realized that BAU work is important. Obviously, you need to do error-free, work with good hygiene. I think that's a very, very basic expectation from any professional. If someone comes and tells me that I've generated something with 0 errors or 0 output, you've just done your job, right? I mean, that's a very, very basic expectation from anyone. What really differentiates you is that 20% where while and to your point, Mohan, on AI taking over, right? I think 5 years down the line, technology to a large extent would make things, the whole field, it would be a lot more level playing, right? In terms of information asymmetry, in terms of access to, computing, things like that, it's going to make a level playing field. So what is really going to differentiate people is the ability to solve complex or business fuzzy problems which are not very well defined, right? For which you cannot define algorithms. And that's the 20%. So that's the 20% that you need to focus on, which will really differentiate yourself from the rest of the crowd. And that's something that I have done over time. So I've chosen one area, which is a niche area, which is where you don't have a lot of, I would say, expertise. M&A, fundraising, IPO is that's my specialty. And what I've learned over time is these are areas where you can really make an impact or a difference to an organization. And that's where I focused most of my time and energies on. Even though that's probably 80% of my job description is not that. 20% is what would fit into that. But I believe I create maximum impact for the organization by devoting time to that 20%.
Right, that's really nice. In fact, also stood out from me, apart from the Pareto's principle, is the ability to say no. Because many people I've realized, they don't like to say no or, hesitate or reluctant to say no. So thanks for that. To you, Mohan, since you spoke about the avoid thinking like an expert in the previous one, and I also gave the example of brave hearts, right? So I'm curious to know if you've encountered any such situations in your workplace, and how has it been wherein you avoid thinking like an expert? Because many times many of us think I am the domain expert, I have the best knowledge and everything. So how does one step aside of that and think not like an expert?
One of the instant, actually, one big project we were able to win, and it's a very niche skill, and we didn't find much people in the market in a short term, but we have to deliver the project. Okay, we all thought we need a Databricks skills. Okay, it is one of the platform skills actually which can help migrate a huge volume of data from one platform to the another platform for any companies. Okay. Terabyte, gigabyte, that kind of a size of data had to be moved from one platform to the another platform. All experts thought that we need a Databricks skills. Okay. But all of a sudden, one junior full stack developer came and told us that moving a data from one database to another database, all it needs is a scripting skills. Okay. And it is written on Python. All we need is a Python developer who is very good at doing that. Okay. Finally, we end up hiring 40 Databricks experts, and we pay very high for the people. Okay. You unimaginably 3 or 4 year guy will be getting 30 lakh, 36 lakh and all. Okay. So that is the level of pay we make to the experts in Databricks and things like that, and we hire. But eventually, 4 full stack developers were able to solve the problem. But there was a lot of meeting going on, experts' opinion had been taken and things like that. We were struggling for 2-3 months to at least reach the stage of closures. But we were able to end up closing that project in a week of 2 with 4 people. Okay. So sometimes experts think exaggerated. Okay. The moment you gain the over knowledge in some platform, our restriction of thinking lead to a wrong decisions. Okay. That's when the people who do PhD and all, they are experts in one field. If you take a scientist in a chemistry and they will gain knowledge in one thing actually, but they fail to understand the big picture. Or sometimes experts think big picture, CEOs think big picture. They won't be able to look at one wrong hire we were able to make, but that got avoided actually. So it's a top-down approach we have taken. We had to hire a one senior person. Okay, CEO decided, let him go through his reference and all those things, and he got couple of candidates. Finally, we were able to shortlist one candidate, and we were about to offer 80 to 90 lakh for that person, okay, 2 years back. But when it come for a final discussion, we had to only simply do negotiation sometimes and roll out the offer, okay. We were able to find the instability in the mind of that person, okay, because he had a employment break in the past 3 years back, okay, but he was not able to decide on certain scenarios when we were able to throw. That is when all management people, juniors here, freshers here, you should dare to throw a lot of questions to the candidate, pull out the real story in them, what has happened in the past, how they were able to successful or they failed in a scenario, okay. If you have a fear of asking questions, you will miserably fail in your profession. So you volunteer to do a lot of questions and pull out the real story in them. So then we finally avoided that candidate, and it came true actually. Other company had to hire him and he had to quit the company in 6 months, and which we came to know later. Okay. And that time only the top management has a realization, okay, we actually would have made a wrong hire, and it would have actually costed us heavily. And we would have wasted time, more than cost, time wasters. So this is one of the things which we have learned, and the principle applies here.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that practical example. To you, Rajan, what are your thoughts on, one of the mental models is finding your own flaws, right? So what are your thoughts on that? And, I would like to hear your perspective on everybody has blind spots. So how do you think one can overcome the blind spots? Because that's what your flaws are about, right?
Yeah. This specific principle on finding your own flaws is sort of ties back into one of the things that I did speak about, where you have to be self-critical of yourself, and also a lot of times peer reviewing helps in that, right? I think I'd like to go back to the peer review principle. I think that is a big aid for you to see the mirror, or for people to show you the mirror. I've actually used it several times, right? And one of the things that in fact, whenever I sit down for my appraisal, right, and more recently my appraisals are done by the CEO of the company, right, and we invariably, of course, we speak pretty much every day on several things, but once a year I do tell him that, this is one session where I'm not going to talk, I'm going to listen to you talk, and I want to hear about the years that's just gone by, right? And please dedicate the first half an hour of that conversation to things that I could have done significantly better. So I don't start off by saying, what are the things that didn't go well, or what did I do wrong, as opposed to asking a question around how could I have done things better. And that's generally the way I start a conversation. While I do send him a very detailed document in terms of what I've done, what have been my accomplishments, but I also send him a document which contains things that I've not done well, according to in my own view, right? So I think finding your own flaws, I think it's very, very important for us to periodically look at the rear view mirror, right? Because we are all so focused on looking ahead on things to be done. But the journey that we've sort of made and the paths that we've sort of crossed already, it's very important to keep reflecting back. And not just that, I also take surveys very, very seriously. That's one thing that as an organization, we lay a lot of emphasis on. In fact, a lot of the business leaders within the organization, close to about 30% of their variable pay is linked to customer feedback, right? Feedback that they, it could be delivery related feedback, it could be servicing related feedback, right? And therefore, as you know, from a culture and a DNA standpoint, feedback is something that is very taken very importantly. And surveys, again, I love filling up surveys. I never miss, whenever there's a request for a survey, I'd be one of the first people to turn in the survey, right? And likewise, for my team, which is the finance team, again, every quarter we actually send out a survey to all our stakeholders, getting feedback in terms of what could we do better, what are the areas that we've not done well, right? So I think surveys are an excellent tool for professionals to get feedback, because it's also, in some sense, and please run anonymous surveys, because when you run surveys where the username is actually reflected, people are hesitant to give feedback. So anonymous feedback is an excellent way for you to reflect on things that you need to. In fact, some very interesting and startling revelations come through when and this is especially after the appraisal season gets over. We run a survey, right? So people's concerns around compensation, people's concerns around being valued, right? Their ideas being taken, seriously, right? All of those things come to forth and to the fore, and these help you, improve the work that you do. So I would say that's taking surveys and taking feedback constantly is probably my way of reflecting on your own
Definitely, I
flaws.
think that's very nice. And if I were to add on, I think a feed forward also will be a good thing instead of just waiting for a feedback. Yes, I think that's a great way to work around your blind spots and see how you can get better at what you do. To you, Mohan, I think will be the last question, and then we'll throw it open for Q&A. So, the last is about the Parkinson's law, which is very occupied. Whatever space is there. If you can do a task within 1 hour and then 5 hours for it, you take up all the 5 hours. That's quite human. I mean, many of us go through that. So what have you experienced there, and any thoughts that come to your mind?
Actually, I agree with that principle, actually. The more the time somebody is given, okay, we will not be able to complete the work. We will take the whole time to complete the work, procrastinations. For example, when Sangeeta came and asked me, okay, Mohan, you have to come for this program, and this is a book review, and you have to read this book. Then I said immediately, no, it's been quite some time. I have not read a book at all. That reading habit has come down drastically. I may not be able to spend time. No, it's a very easy book. You can do it in short time and things like that. She gave plenty of time. For example, 2 to 3 weeks for us. But frankly speaking, I didn't even complete this book. To admit, okay, I came here for a review, but I got the crux of the book very well. Okay. Frankly speaking, I was not able to complete the book, but I completed the book before the session starts. When I got a complete run through by Sangeeta, the 30 models. Okay, some of the models I have not read at all. But one thing in common in all these mental models and all these lessons this author is trying to teach us is our decision. Okay, I would like to share my personal story here. Okay. After getting married, I took my wife to a store for a sari, buying a sari, okay? And she took 1 hour and she asked me, Mohan, which one do you like? I said, this one. She rejected that. She didn't select that and she bought another option. Okay, I took it very light. This is the first time, okay, people have their own choice and things like that, okay? But this trend continued for a longer period. Okay. So one day I said, she was again asking me, okay, hey, Mohan, why don't you select one? No, this time I'm not going to select. Every time you have never selected the one I have chosen. Okay. You didn't give me a chance at all. No, this time you try. And I purposefully selected one after a forceful push. And that also she rejected. She didn't select. Okay. So I got pissed off. Okay, what is this? Yeah, I shouldn't do this again and things like that. Then our ego will hurt, no? Always. Okay, any human. For one of her birthday, I decided to go to a shop, buy a saree of my own choice and gifted her. Okay. She, oh, thanks Mohan, very well. What is the price? She asked. Where you bought? Why have you gone to that shop? It's very costly shop. We can get the similar stuff in some other shop at a very reasonable price and things like all those stories. Okay. No, this is a gift. Don't tell anything. Please accept. Then she accepted. She liked the option. Okay, because it's a costly thing. Because I had to impress her. No other go. So finally, after 1 week, she took the same saree, gone all the way to the shop, found other options in the similar rate range. She couldn't find one which can impress her. Okay, that shows she didn't like that 100%. Only 80% match was there. Okay, then she coming back and told me, okay, Mohan, I didn't find a better choice than this for this cost. So I have no other go but to accept this thing. Okay. Then it made me realize that as a person. So one of the model mentioned here is you have to introspect yourself what you are potentially high capable of. Otherwise, you have to seek the help of the other people. Okay? But when I introspect myself in this case, okay, whenever I go for my purchase, okay, with friends and with other people's choice only I accept. I never do my choice. That means as a person, I am not good at choosing something. Okay, but I have the habit of viewing the good thing through other people's eyes. Some people have the habit of viewing good things through their eyes. They doesn't care how they look in the eyes of the other people. But for me, how I look in the eyes of the other people matters. So I go by the other people's choice. So I am a bad decision maker in terms of making that choice. So I had to realize that I am not a very good decision maker, but sometimes, see, in our profession, okay, we used to shortlist people, okay. We have the liberty to throw 4 or 5 questions and shortlist people, okay. After reading this book, another realization is, okay, we are not justifying certain times because of hurry. Okay, even the leadership hires, okay, because we will have a 30 minutes, 40 minutes slots to complete the assessment. Our hunch will most of the time pay off. Sometimes it fails. That one failure will lead to a big drastic change. So that is the lesson learned. Okay, we say immaterial, whatever be the position you are, junior or senior or a top CEO, you have to give the sufficient time in terms of making this thing. So the principle here is, in any decision making, you have to grow the tree like yes, no, and final yes will come. Okay? To make that final yes, okay, you should know how to tell no to the people. That's what we have to learn. Say, I have worked with 6-7 CEOs. Okay? So many of the people, when it comes to no, they strongly struggle. Okay, they don't have the guts to say no because they would develop a rapport. Hey, I know Mohan, many a times he is a good decision maker. He had helped me find a good talent. But people should always question why you are actually sometimes blindfoldedly people will select the resources. That is wrong actually.
So there is a related question since you're talking about that. Kana Reddy from E-Road has asked this question. He says specifically to you, can you share a situation where a particular mental model significantly influenced your decision-making process in human resources?
Okay. Say, one of the model which actually influenced me very well in terms of selecting a resources, okay, the bias principle. Okay, we always bias towards, okay, hey, which actor you like? I had the tendency to ask this. Okay, if he says some known actor, which there are like-minded people, we tended to select those people. We didn't even ask their capability matrix, potential, skill matrix, and all those things. But in this model, okay, whenever you do a data analysis, you have to have a JD in hand, and what is the competency matrix, what is the skill matrix required for this particular position. If somebody had to fulfill these positions, good decision maker is required, because this, if somebody wants to expert decision making, this for beginners, definitely this book is advisable. Okay, quick decision making. My CEO used to decide on 60 lakh hires just like that. Sometimes he, for 6,000 decision, he may take 6 days or 7 days like that. I have seen this. So when I introspected, why he is able to make such a quick decisions? We will go with a lot of data analysis and other points to impress him. We might expect 10 odd questions, but he will say, okay, Mohan, go ahead and hire this candidate. No problem. But for 6,000, we have to send multiple reminders and get that. Okay, the model which I liked is important, urgent. That fourth, very, very important. Whatever be your experience, you have, whatever, any everyday action, if you analyze the important, urgent, it will save lot of time, lot of cost. Okay, that is the one model which we have to apply in hiring as well. So what is very important in this hire? What is, in hurry-burry, we should not hire anybody. That's the learning.
Nice share. Thank you. Rajan, to you, the Raja from Pondicherry is asking this question. How do you apply mental models to financial planning and analysis at LatentView to ensure long-term success?
That's actually a very nice question. And, as you were showing me that question, I was trying to synthesize in my head as to how do I actually apply mental models while doing FP&A, right? So FP&A, for most of you folks, it's what we typically call as preparing budgets. Then you assess your actual performance versus the budgets, and also revise forecasts, right, for the period. And these could be typically 1 year, 3 year, 5 year type forecasts, right, that you work with. Now, in terms of our annual operating plan, when we actually sit down to prepare the annual operating plan, this is something that I can talk about, right? As an organization, LatentView, we execute a lot of what I would call as short-term projects, which are 6 to 12-month type projects, where these are not projects which are annuity in nature. So every year, you pretty much begin the year with, I won't say zero, but you don't have an order backlog like a lot of the other IT companies. If you were to track them, they publish a metric called order backlog, which gives you revenue visibility for a 3 year, 5 year period, because you have signed contracts that you can execute over a period of time. So that 40-70 principle, as we were just talking about, right? For you to plan as well as arrive at decision making, if you have information that is anywhere between 40 to 70%, right? You should actually make decisions and not wait for getting more information or more accurate information beyond the 70%. That really applies to the work that we do at LatentView, because invariably the targets that we set, right? Beginning of the year, we have visibility for the following year for up to about 70% based on the work that we've already delivered. So, and therefore, the incremental net new or net growth that we need to deliver over the previous year numbers is typically the 30%. And that's how we actually go about setting goals and targets for business leaders and functional heads, right? So that's something that we do apply on a daily basis. But applying the Pareto principle, right, which is again a favorite of mine, the 80-20, right? If I were to look at the expense lines of my organization, right, because a CFO ultimately, while you can enable growth, you can't deliver growth. But the one thing that you can definitely control is the costs, right? And that's what profitability is most often a metric that a CFO is tasked with. I can safely say that the one line of expense that gets the most debated and most reviewed is the expense that we do on the sales and marketing side, right? Because that is typically about 15 to 20% of our overall spends, and that can make or break the company, in the sense that we can actually, whether we deliver our numbers or we don't deliver our numbers, right? It really depends on the effectiveness of that S&M spend, right? Because the sales guys are the ones who finally are going to go and sell. right? And marketing in a lot of ways enables and generates leads for the sales guys to then go and close, right? So the 20% spend that we actually do is the one that gets reviewed the most and also discussed and debated a lot, right? So we spend a lot of time in that 20%, which then ensures that we actually deliver on the organizational growth.
Lovely. I hope that answers the thing. Nice share. Mohan, to you, which find effective in evaluating and selecting top talents, and how have they shaped your approach to recruitment?
When you select a top talent, you have to look at the business orientation, okay? Not everybody directly fits to the business as well as the culture of the company, okay? So, one wrong hire at that level will lead to lot of problem in the company, okay? So, especially the culture of the company differs drastically, okay? For example, one of my experiences, I worked for a company 14 years, okay? It's a completely work from office company, okay? The company which I am currently working is completely remote. So mindset changes drastically, okay? The way you speak, the way you communicate, okay? See, and those companies, they say the culture, the top people are from US, okay? Their thinking power is different from the Indians' way of thinking, okay? Everything is black and white, okay? No ifs and buts there. You have to be very straightforward in decision making and things like that. The model which proposes is data analysis, okay? How are you going to analyze the data? How speed you are going to equip to the work culture of the company matters a lot. Otherwise, your survivability will be a very question mark, okay? You can't survive in this world. Adoption is another key thing, okay? For everything, data matters. You should have an eyes and ears open, okay? When you are in remote, it is highly difficult, okay? And when you deal with techies, prominently, see, most of the people here are management peoples. When we deal with techies, their mindset is entirely different, okay? They are from a different world, okay? So their thinking power is different, and we cannot actually, so, and the younger generation today, okay? That is another key thing. So we have to adapt to the changes of the generations, and culture adoptions is very, very key. Okay. So data introspections, personality introspections, and adopting to other people's personality. Whom are we speaking with? What kind of a person he or she is? Very, very important. Okay. Otherwise, one wrong discussions will lead to a drastic change.
Sure. Nice.
So we have to watch our words and watch our analysis. Go with the data points before talking to any meetings, any discussions.
Yes.
That is clear.
You've been stressing on data, and the last question we have, because of lack of time, is Rajan, to you. There's a specific question. What mental models do you use to identify and create value in complex financial transactions that you have contributed to the growth of LatentView?
This is actually a really interesting question, and the moment it came, what occurred to me was an acquisition that we very, very recently concluded upon. This was an acquisition that I was front-ending for the organization, because I also lead corporate development efforts along with the team which runs these initiatives. Very, very interesting, I would say 6 months, right? I mean, we've been working on this particular acquisition for close to about, I think since November of last year, right? And the mental model that I want to draw reference to is actually think like Darwin, thinking what your opponents are thinking, right? Because in this particular transaction, one of the things that I had to front end was handle negotiations on valuation as well as the entire transaction structuring with the founder of this other company, right? Which is, of course, probably in terms of size was probably about 1/8 of our size. So much smaller company. But again, you're dealing with an entrepreneur who's built a business, right? I mean, and for him to sit across the table and negotiate with a CFO, for instance, who's not a founder, right? For him, he's someone who's built this business grounds up, right? So one, you have to put yourself in that person's shoes and think as to what is he thinking, right? What are the arguments that he's going to bring up when obviously a lot of these back and forths happen on email, but then eventually problems get resolved when you get on a call and talk one-on-one, right? And a lot of times before getting into those conversations, I would actually visualize as to what is he thinking, what is his thought process for each of those aspects, and I think that really helped, right? And I did, in fact, once the deal was done, and I would say there were points that he conceded, there were points that I conceded, right? But when we sat down for a drink after the transaction concluded, and we spoke about things that worked in our favor and didn't work, both of us realized that we were actually role playing and we were actually putting ourselves in the other person's shoes. And I think we had developed such a good, I would say, image of each other, right? As to how we'd behave or how we'd want to counter each other. And these are things that you learn over a period of time. So that was
Lovely. I think that's a very healthy way of doing it and looking it from others' perspective. Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So I think we are about time. Thank you for being a great audience.
Thank you, Sangeeta, Mohan, Rajan. Great thing to really go through all the 30 models. I know you must get a chance, get this book to read. It will do a lot of good. Once again, very warm round of applause to all the viewers who are watching the program live. Also, we have over 480 viewers watching the program. Number of questions have come, but many of the questions what you said is all been covered by the speakers in the presentation. Now, I reckon Venkat join me on stage to do the honor to distinguished speakers. We give you more book to read. Come. Ladies first. Yeah, see you. Good to see you, sir. I want to see you more. Yeah.